are you, Itai? How was Dreamforce?
Dreamforce was fantastic. It was huge as always. I was super busy. Wish you could be there with us. But yeah, we had a great time.
I love it. I love it. I'm sure the topic of the moment was agents and what Agent Force is doing and where the world is going, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's all about Agent Force. It's all about agents. And so, yeah, all agents all the time. It was really fantastic to see all these customers and how everyone is leveraging AI to really change the way that they work.
Are people like showing up to those types of events, like really curious and asking questions, or do they step back and just watch the show going on? Like, what do you typically see?
Well, look, I mean, we have, I forget exactly how many, tens of thousands of people there. So you'd get like the whole gamut from developers that want to understand how to better develop on the platform to users that want to know how to better use the platform, to executives that want to learn from other customers and how they're engaging with the customers. So it's definitely a lot of conversations, not only with us, with our customers, but also with customers and speaking to their peers and learning from each other.
Which is the best form of learning, which is exactly why we do these types of events because everyone is trying to figure out what the hell do we do? What is AI? How does this work? How does this going to benefit our organization? And we typically find that everyone is just searching for information. So yeah, excited to have you here. We're going to get started on this here, folks. So first, I want to welcome Itai. So Itai is the head of incubation and AI research at Salesforce. He is one of the greatest thought leaders around what is coming up for AI over, the next few years, and we're super grateful, Itai, to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So the whole purpose of these sessions and what we try to do is it's a series, and each one of these episodes is where we explore really how enterprises can practically bring AI to life. So we have been talking about AI a lot. We've been talking about, what will it do? How will it change our work? The tools, the technology itself. And really these sessions are focused on giving folks an understanding really of where is AI going? What will I expect to see in like real terms to our organizations? What does it mean for the business? What does it mean for individuals? And I know, Itai, you spend so much time with your team really kind of thinking about like things that no one else is thinking about. And I would love for you to really open up and tell us a little bit about really what are you kind of seeing the world is going in terms of where are we going to go? Like where are we at now, but where are we going to go? And really sort of help folks get that grasp of where it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean it's that's a big topic, right? And there's so much change that we're seeing. We have this term change will never be as slow as it is today, and it keeps getting more and more true every year. We're right now in what we call the third wave of AI. AI is not new, right? For a lot of people, 3 years ago, it's almost been 3 years, by the way, to the day. It's
It's
today.
crazy.
November 19th, right? November 30th, 2022 is when ChatGPT came out. And then I think that for a lot of people, this generative AI is what people think of when they think about AI. But AI has been around not only for kind of, the past decade or so, but, since the middle of the last century, essentially. And we're now in that third wave. It really began with predictive AI. As you mentioned, I run our incubation. I am actually within our AI research group. I work with a lot of our researchers, engineers, inventing what's coming up next. And we've been researching AI for the past, over 10 years. And throughout that time, a lot of that time has been in predictive AI. How do we make predictions better? Right? Remember, like,
Hmm.
what's the next best action? And so that's been AI kind of like more in the past before this kind of big push that we have right now. And so that evolved in that, in the end of 2022 into generative AI. AI that doesn't just predict, now it can generate text, right? LLMs, large language models. And very, very quickly, we went from generative AI to now agentic AI, what we used to call autonomous AI, and now we're talking about agentic AI. And what is agentic AI? Is AI that can actually take action and do some stuff for you. And we really look at it as AI that is augmenting the way that you work, augmenting the way that everybody works. And I'm sure this is going to be most of the conversation that we'll talk about, like how do people use AI? What is the best ways? Like where does it actually do things for you? Whether, what are the human tasks and what are the AI tasks?
Mm.
But there are more waves coming in the future. We're already seeing amazing advancements in robotics, right? If you've been to San Francisco, you may have gone in a Waymo, which is really a robot on wheels, and it's a pretty amazing. Have you done this, Siobhan?
No, but I literally I've thought about doing it so many times and then I chicken out. So I literally need to do
Well,
it.
I'll tell you. Look, first of all, they have. I think that their rollout has been fantastic, right? They have amazing, like they have really nice cars, right? They have these Jaguar SUVs, and you enter like, yeah, I was the first time I entered that. I was kind of not knowing really what it would be like. It's the smoothest ride you'll ever experience. It's just so smooth. But the funny thing I think about it is that people actually take advantage of it because these cars are very cautious, right? And so people would actually just kind of step in front of them. They would not let him through. There are these videos of these Waymos just kind of stuck in traffic because no one's letting them through. There's no eye contact with the driver. They're like, hey, thank you. So, so we're already starting to get into this era of robotics, and so all the quirks that exist today with AI, and you're either texting with AI, or you're talking to it, and you have these weird moments. Think about that in the physical world, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so these are the waves as I see it, as we see it at Salesforce, and the progress, like I said, is just like it's tremendous all the time, and from where we were last year. We launched Agentforce last year, and then we just had Dreamforce again this year. The change from back then to now is just amazing.
That was going to be my question. Like, have you noticed the shift in customer? Because I've definitely seen we were early and I had to like drag everybody over the hill a little bit with like trying to like educate. And now it doesn't feel so hard because the general population is now like aware that this is happening. Like, what was the difference between Dreamforce last year and this year in terms of like people's perceptions, the use of AI in their company? Like, because your customers are like big, super complex, really strict in terms of privacy and security, compliance. What was the difference?
Well, I mean, again, we have customers that span the gamut, right? We have very small companies to the biggest companies in the world. And so I think that the way that it was last year, everybody was still just getting used to the idea of generative AI and agents and just wrapping their heads around it. And what we saw a lot last year is a lot of experimentations. How do you actually, create these proof of concepts, pilots? There's so many pilots, so many agents, and in what we're seeing this year is scale. How do you
Mm,
take the successful pilots and you scale them up? How do you take proven use cases and start to see real ROI from it? So I think that what we're starting to see is just more convergence on where are the really effective use cases. How do you scale it across the organization? And how do you do that effectively in a way that people actually use it, adopt it?
hmm.
Because people are used to having these tools now as on their personal lives. Whether you're using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, you're used to asking random questions throughout the day, and then you try to take that to work, and all of a sudden you have this issue where, well, a lot of your institutional knowledge is locked, right? And ChatGPT or anything like that is not going to know exactly where that data is and not have access to that data. So that's where you have this expectation of consumers actually wanting to have that same experience, and at the same time, how do you do that on an organizational level? It's a little bit like how when the iPhone came out.
Yeah.
Um, and people started using things like Uber or whether it's Netflix or any kind of app, and so you have this consumer experience, and you go to work, and then you have an intranet. Right? Remember those days?
Can't get through.
And so that difference between the consumer experience and what you expect for an enterprise to be able to do is where, where we bridge a lot of that gap. And we're like, okay, what is an enterprise AI experience like? What should it be like? And what type of experiences you would have, and how do you make sure that people actually use it and not go off and do a lot of that shadow AI work, right? You're familiar
Hmm.
with the shadow AI term, like where people are
Yeah, hell,
using kind
I
of
make
like
so much money
unapproved
because of it.
unapproved unapproved tools, hopefully not putting any company or customer information in those tools to
Yeah.
get answers that they need, because it just makes everything so much more easy and efficient.
Yeah, we did. I have seen a couple of examples where customers who were too late to the party, given their people access, people then have ChatGPT on their phone and are screenshotting stuff and then uploading and doing things that they shouldn't be doing, right? And that's a whole other problem for businesses, right? Especially when it comes to customer and people data. So I think like how do you get businesses quick enough to the point where they're accepting and creating usable, responsible AI, where your employees are enabled to use it, but at the same time we've got a company way of doing things because it's got trained information that's really valuable, that's obviously done in a certain way. And that's the thing I think a lot of customers were stuck in last year, was like, how do we do this without like causing a whole pile of risk? Like we felt a lot of the conversations were still a little bit on the risk. And now to your point, we see the same thing where it's like, okay, we've tested, we've piloted, we've kind of failed in these, but these have done well. How do we think about doing this at scale? So totally aligned. When you look at the like, given the role that you get to play, it's a really cool like situation that you can find yourself in. In one hand, you get to like completely imagine and research like theories of where you believe. Like, what do you think it'll be like as a company in the future? Like, what the companies look like in the future? Like what does that like paint the picture of like how do we work? What does it look like? Yeah, like.
So it's so the way that we work actually is not just in theory, but actually also incubating ideas with customers, right? How do you take theoretical AI and turn it into applied AI, and see some behaviors, and so one of the things that we do, I work very closely with our futures team, and the futures team is intentionally plural, futures, because we imagine different scenarios
Oh, I love it.
that can happen in the future. And it's not that we have a prediction of specifically one scenario that's going to happen. And and some scenarios are more likely than others to occur, but we need to be prepared for all different scenarios. And we obviously also have a hand in influencing what this future might look like. And so, as I mentioned before, we're really focused on how do we augment um, human tasks and the way that you do your work. And the way that I look at it is that, you know, again, in the same way that the iPhone or kind of like the kind of mobile revolution really gave us these superpowers, right? Like I know that some people here might be kind of a bit young to remember, but before the iPhone and before kind of like the technology, like you couldn't get an Uber, like you had to call a car service to pick you up if you weren't, like, if you couldn't just walk down the street. And here in New York, I'm in Manhattan, you can just hail down a cab. But if you're in Brooklyn or somewhere, like everybody had on their fridge like a phone number of a car service, right? Because you needed to call it. And we don't think about it right now. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna get an Uber. And so I think in the same way, we're not gonna think about it. There's a term that we call ambient intelligence, which is how agents are going to be embedded in the environment. So as we're talking right now on this Zoom, this might already be transcribed. I don't even know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And so agents are going to listen to what we're saying, to kind of see what we're looking at, especially on the screen and in the future, also in real environments. They're not necessarily going to record it. It's not about privacy necessarily. They're going to give us maybe insights or clues, or if you're asking me a question and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really have that statistic handy, but an agent might actually give me a hint like, hey, here is something that can help you, or here's
Mm,
a stat that you, and again, if it knows my customer, it knows my relationship, it knows my products, it might help me whether I'm in service or I'm in sales, to be able to to have these superpowers, right?
yeah.
Maybe I would wear some like augmented glasses that would give me information visually or audibly, so that I can, have more information, tap into this like uh, super knowledge that, I might know but not remember exactly,
Yeah.
or, I might just know how to, like, have an advantage by accessing it, without any effort, right? That's why it's like
Mhm.
ambient. It's in the environment. So I think a lot of those things are going to profoundly change the way that we work in the future, but in ways that we're not going to even think about. It's just,
Yeah.
and I'm a big believer in humans. Being one, maybe it's a little bit of a bias, but I think that work is going to continue to be human. Um, but the type of work that we're doing is going to be less about repetitive things, less about kind of busy work, and more about engaging with other humans. That is the one skill that, even with all the reasoning and everything, and we saw yesterday there was the announcement for Gemini 3, amazing capabilities in terms of reasoning and knowledge. But what is the most effective way to have a relationship? Uh, Nothing beats an in-person meeting. And what does it mean to be in person? It's just there's a human element to it. And this
Hmm.
is not something that you can replicate, but you can augment it, and you can have the ambient intelligence on top of it to help you understand, have the information that you need at your fingertips. Not look for information as you're having the conversation, and it's not even doesn't even need to be an agent to a personal agent to me, a one-on-one agent. It could be an agent for a group. We now have meetings that an AI joins the meeting, and so that we can have like a discussion, kind of like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it would give you feedback as you're going along to improve and to push you further. And so that is some of the ways that I see the future kind of shaping. Um, again, I'm an optimist. I think that future is actually, with agents, is going to become more human.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. One of the things that I think will be really interesting from a workforce perspective. So when you're thinking about this ambient moment, like think of all of the jobs that we can't find people for. Think of like all of the, the really complex things. Even like an example, like Starbucks or something like that, where they've got high turnover of baristas.
Mhm.
Like imagine that someone whispering in your ear of what the best next move would be and what to take. That is ridiculously cool, because that takes you from being day one to day very quickly ramped. You know what I mean? Where you're like taking what typically would take an individual maybe 3 to 6 months to actually learn, to then shortening that cycle of when you can be productive and start really doing well. Like that for me, like, I mean, I wish I had that running a company, someone in my ear just like saying do this, don't do that. Like that would be incredible. And I think for all of the roles, typically most folks are talking about AI when it comes to like repetitive tasking right now, which is like knowledge work type stuff. What you're talking about is like everything. Like it could be in a factory, could be in a coffee shop, could be, it takes like it not just from knowledge work, but into like actual doing, because if something is in your ear or giving you instructions, you're able to perform the task at the same time. I think this is where it's going to get really big, like in terms of like how we work. So have you seen a lot of that start to play out? When you're incubating, like, are you seeing, like, how comfortable are humans handing over the reins? Like you're talking about the Waymos, but like when it's talking about that kind of like decision. Like I imagine like something feeding you and I right now, telling us like, Siobhan, stop talking so much, coaching me, like be more professional, like blah, 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 like, do you
Right.
see humans using it? Have you started to like adjust to that world?
Yeah, so we're doing, we're incubating and we're doing user tests and how do people actually react to certain things. So I think that there are a couple of ways that people are, that we're testing how people are really augmenting their work with it. The first thing that I think, an insight is that it has to be out of the way in a way. That's why we call
Mm,
it um, for it to be useful, it doesn't mean that it needs to kind of bombard you with information. If it, let's say I would ask you a question and then the AI would just give you this long answer. If you'd start to recite it, it's just like, to me, it's like you lost that human connection, right?
yeah,
And I don't know if you've had it. I've had candidates. I've interviewed
I'm
people.
doing it right now. It's
And have you
terrible.
had this thing where kind of like all of a sudden you see their eye go like that, and
100%.
they start reciting something, and it's like, are
Oh,
you talking to me? Are
same.
you reading?
Yeah, honestly, and you can see the white of their eye, like you can see the reflection in their eye change,
Yeah.
and then the yeah, uh-huh. Yep. And
And
I know I'm being recorded and no one's asked me permission. I'm seeing like I know it, like because I can see that something's feedbacking to them. Yep, yep. I'm
And
seeing that a
so
lot.
and so that's the difference between, okay, so you're reading something, you're kind of like completely all of a sudden not engaged. But if you can get that out of the way and maybe just give you a signal, right? Whether it's a quick a bullet point of something to remind you, or a reminder, like when you're preparing for a talk or presentation, you don't actually write the whole thing. You have some bullets. Okay, this is what I want to talk about. And so if you can have that type of engagement, we see a lot of promise in that. Okay, it's it's
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a sidekick that helps me, when I need a little bit of a, line, right? Or you're on stage, kind of just give you a
Yeah.
little bit of a line to start you off. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is in a way. Teaching or onboarding AI to do work that is maybe more specific and specialized to a certain role or task. So we're working right now with UCSF Health, one of the biggest hospitals. I think it's number one hospital in California, and they get a lot of inquiries for their billing, right? Understandable. If you don't understand the bill, maybe you have questions about your deductible and stuff like that, you would call your health care provider. And a lot of that information, and it's not just in healthcare, obviously in every industry, it's locked in people's brains, right? You have a certain person, you might have 20 people, 50 people, whatever it is, in your contact center. And you know that you have like these like five ringers that they know everything. They've been there for a long time. Um, and that information, like, oh yeah, you need to go to that system, you click there, you jump over to this place, and that's how you get that information. And have you had that experience where you call a call center and you're like, oh man, this person is not going to be able to help me, let me try again, maybe I'll get like a better person. What if we could actually teach the AI some of these tricks that actually, people have them stuck in their heads, and that's exactly what we're doing with UCSF Health. We call it a learning engine. This it's a in that learning engine lets us teach AI these human tricks.
Hmm.
And so if a certain person knows something, they can teach that AI a certain skill, and then you generalize that skill, and it's like, oh, I can use that new skill to answer a few different questions that I'm getting from customers. And so I think these two ways are kind of like ways that people are going to start working more with AI. One is, having as a helper is kind of like this thing that is not in the way but is helping along the way. And the other is teaching AI to help them better, right? So onboarding AI, and I feel like we're going to be onboarding AI for a long time. There's
Yeah.
a lot of small little things that are, all these edge cases that AI is going to just need to learn. And eventually, I don't think that it's ever going to stop learning. It's like we're going to, it's kind of keep teaching it to kind of do these things that, we just don't want to do. The things that it's not never going to be able to do is the human connection.
Yeah. And Carrie is asked in the channel a question. She's like, how do you see corporate training evolving with AI? I mean, everything you're talking about is like perfect example for like training folks, like this ambient like training is like, that's like a whole unlock, right?
Yeah, I think that's training in particular. I mean, learning is completely transforming. I mean, you see that happening in many different environments, and in particular, having this tutor type of way of learning with an AI is very, very helpful because it's not simply question and answer. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, did you get this right? Did you get this wrong? Being a good teacher is being a good mentor and a tutor that kind of helps you get to the answer rather than telling you the answer. And we're already seeing it with examples like Khan Academy has been one of the first ones to show how that's being done. There's a lot of companies out there that are starting to take like learning to the next level. It's going to be interesting to see. My son just started college, and so he's leveraging AI to kind of help him study and all that. But it would be interesting to see how higher education and
Hmm.
education in general is starting to adopt this because that is a major change in the way that how do we learn? How do we actually, what is learning? Is memorizing learning? Is, being able to
Yeah.
summarize something in your head learning? Or
Yeah.
is applying something that you learn and generalizing it to other topics? Is, I think that that is a big crisis right now for kind of education in general. But for corporate learning, I think it's huge, and we're probably going to be seeing a whole industry around this forming to take advantage of that.
Yeah. I can't wait to get my like CEO, put it in my ear, and it'll tell me what to do and what rules not to break. It's going to be amazing. So, in terms of like companies, you guys get to work with the best and the biggest and the most complex, but yet the smallest, right? When you're looking at companies that are adopting AI, what separates the organizations who are making progress versus the ones that seem to be like stuck in status quo or in this like field pilot territory of AI tourists, right? Like
Yeah.
what's the difference?
So I think that there are a couple of elements that go in there. The first one, and I think everyone is now aware of this, is data. Data organization, data hygiene, knowing where your data is and organizing it and making sure that that data is clean. Actually, yesterday we just announced our acquisition of Informatica.
Yeah, I did
That
see that.
helps us do exactly that, right? How do you, organize your data? How do you harmonize your data? You may have, especially for large organizations, they may have like a web page somewhere that's not even accessible. Like you might find it maybe if you Google something and you don't even know about it, but it has outdated information. That in itself can already contaminate your data and might give,
Yeah.
if you have a wrong answer from your AI, it might not be a hallucination. It might just be that it's looking at some data that you don't want it to look at. So being able to harmonize and clean data is a one thing that organizations that are able to adopt and get better results are doing better, right? They're if you have better data organization, you're already ahead of the game. Um, and the other one is of course behavior change. How do you get people to actually change the way that they do things? And unfortunately, a lot of jobs, people have created complex uh, processes just whether it's to justify or to kind of like to have this thing that
Yeah.
they do. And we used to have this term like busy is the new stupid, right? If you have all this busy work, if you're like you might be super busy all the time, but are you working smart? Like, are you actually making progress? And I think that AI has that capacity to kind of really unpack that very quickly. It's like, oh yeah, let me just take care of that thing that maybe it took care of 90% of your work before. So being able to work differently and to adopt new tools, new ways of working is important. And it's, it's something that is both grassroots and top down.
Mm,
And from an organizational standpoint, the best way to do that is for leaders and managers to show by example. One thing that I did not long ago is, I used to be a developer and designer back in the day. I used to write code. I haven't done that in 15 years. There was one kind of element that we're trying to do for Dreamforce, actually, to have this interactive experience for that helps you learn about our team for AI research. And it was really difficult to get, we have a small agency that works with us to get them to do that. And I figured, like, one week I was like, well, what if I can actually vibe code it myself? So vibe coding, if you're familiar, it's this new term that instead of coding, you're just telling the agent like what to code, right? You're just like, hey, I need a website that does this and this and that, and it'll just vibe code it for you. And it's, I was skeptical. I was like, okay, let's see how far I can stretch it. Um, in about 8 hours, and it was focused, right? I was sitting down and kind of like really, talking to it back and forth. I was able to do something that in 2 months that agency was not able to deliver to me, right? And
and
so
for no money, it cost you nothing, just time,
it was my time.
right?
It was my
Yeah.
time. But it was like, a good weekend project. And I was like, wow, I can actually, like, to the quality of, like, now it's deployed in our AI center in the UK, and we're using it now in conferences. So production quality, 8 hours of work. And so great. I was able to do that. That was fantastic. I was it was cool. I was glad to do that. It's not like I have, it's not like I can become a vibe coder now every day. I have a lot of other things that I need to do. But I was able to use that as a kind of to show my team, like, look, you don't need to necessarily just farm out your work for everything that we do. Whether it's a video or a website or a web page or a presentation, whatever it is, see if you can use a tool an AI tool to kind of like shortcut
Mm.
that
What one did
process
you
for you.
use? What did you
So I
use?
I used Cursor.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. We use Cursor. Yeah,
yeah, I use Cursor with Claude Sonnet as
yeah.
the LLM, and so now some of my team members are now, instead of actually creating mockups, they're vibe coding mockups.
Oh, it's so cool. There's Vibe everything now. There'll be Vibe HR, Vibe legal, Vibe marketing. Like
Well,
everything's
we
gonna
launched
be
at
like,
Dreamforce. We launched vibe coding. Agent Force Vibes.
yeah, I
So
love
that
it.
you can actually vibe code Agent Force apps and Agent Force agents,
Yeah.
and so that ability to do coding with LLMs is incredible. Salesforce, actually, our AI research team was one of the first ones to create a coding generative AI LLM, was called CodeGen, and so we used it internally. It was called Code Genie for our team, and the reason that it works so well is that there's so much code on the internet, right?
Hmm.
The internet is built out of code, and so that coding ability is incredible. Yesterday, again, the Gemini 3, like, one of the cool things that it does is it creates, if you ask it something, sometimes it would actually build an application in order to answer your question. So coding abilities within LLMs is very advanced, and now I'm like one of the way, like instead of trying to create a slide sometimes or create even a mock-up, like I can design on, Illustrator or something like that, or Figma. Instead of doing that, I'm like, well, let me see what, like, if I just vibe code it real quickly, what it would do. And a lot of times it's pretty close. And I'm like, okay,
Mm,
sometimes just enough to do it like that. And so going back to, what are the things that allow organizations to go fast? Showing by example, giving people kind of like the tools to actually expand their skill set, and having that, I think it's a change of mindset that we don't. I feel like if we look at our jobs, at our individual jobs, as is very specific, like no, this is what I do and this is what I don't do. I think that we are limiting ourselves, and we're kind of we're gonna stay behind. You being able to learn how to use AI in different capacities is the best way to kind of future proof your career,
mhm.
and also help your organization move forward.
Yeah. Where we're seeing like what we would say is like the top tier customers that do well, they have kind of two levels. They have one, this kind of localized innovation where they create like a playground for their people with safe tools that are signed off with certain levels of access of data, where you can like locally at an individual level, create agents and do things to help them do exactly what you've just said, like solve little problems that they've got or tasks. But then where there's more complex, enterprise grade ways of working, which has a couple of hundred people running this way of working, that they have this like redesign where they're rethinking the process. Like, how do we actually, what are the tasks that we actually need to do to complete this? And how do we reinvent this rather than just sticking an agent on top and hoping for the best? Like, what is it we can do to reinvent? And I think they're kind of what you were saying is like, we're seeing very similar things around like this whole localized. The only problem that I kind of worry about a little bit is like, in the companies, and you're one of the companies, right? You guys have to be at the front. You build the technology, your employees have to like drive this initiative internally too, right? What happens in the world where every employee is going off and creating their own way of working, and there
Mhm.
is no kind of like everybody in the canoe and everyone's going a different direction? Like, my worry will come to a point where it's like, what happens in that world around velocity? Like,
Yeah.
does it slow us down? Because we are starting to see like that kind of like bottoms up movement. What are you seeing with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It's almost something like a rogue AI in a way, right? And it's even different than the kind of shadow AI. It's
Yeah.
even whether like it could be tools that are approved and everything, but if everyone's starting to work differently, then you're not really getting as much efficiency as you could from these tools. One of the acquisitions that we had done recently is called Regrello, which looks at exactly that. What are the processes? It's almost like a digital supply chain. What are the tasks and methods and clicks and things that you do in order to achieve a certain goal? And so you create that process, and then you can encode that process into an agent. And then deploy that agent. So I think that's it's an important part for organizations to figure out what is the best way to codify the process in which people work, and then enable others to take advantage of that. And so I think it's part of the growing pains, I think, that we're going to see, but people who are going to, the kind of early adopters that are going to use this technology to make their lives easier, they're paving the way, and to kind of like actually, creating these processes. It is important for organizations to then take these like best in class examples, codify them, and allow anyone to actually use them. A good example is the way that we're doing kind of follow up on leads, right, at Salesforce.
Hmm.
And we have obviously, we help our customers with their Salesforce, but we have like, we're known to be kind of like, one of the best Salesforce kind of organizations in the world in terms of like selling. And one of the things with selling is like, how do you choose and how do you prioritize which leads to follow up on? You have a lot of leads. Some of them are cold, some of them are warm, some of them are hot. Especially with those kind of cold leads, how are you following up with them? It's actually very discouraging to keep, trying to get traction where the answer keeps being no, right? It's not a fun thing. You want to get a yes. So you usually people would follow on the leads that are kind of like giving a little bit more of attraction. Um, and so what we've done over the past year is create these SDR agents, sales development representative, SDR. And these SDR agents, they don't really get discouraged if the answer is no or if nobody replies to them. They can follow up on those leads and they can do that 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's not about spamming people. It's not about like, just keep sending them, but it's about understanding who is the customer, having contextual, relevant information that they might respond to. And so even if that response rate is still, not, it's not huge, but you take a huge portion of cases or of leads that you're not even looking at, and you putting it back in the funnel. It's
Yeah.
a huge advantage.
I was one of them. I didn't go to Dreamforce because something came up and I was on the and they are persistent. They did not stop. To the point my assistant said, "Are you supposed to be speaking at this?"
Well,
Because they
have
did
you
not
ever gotten,
stop.
have you ever been on like one of those robocalls and you get really mad at the robot and you don't feel bad yelling at it because you know it's a robot? It
Yeah.
reminds me of those situations. They're like, just let me speak to a human. Like,
One of the things I was speaking to like a leadership forum today with one of our customers, and they asked for like an off record like learning session. And interestingly, use the SDR example. So I did an article with Forbes where we were talking about, my whole mission. I want to build $1 billion company. And for those who don't know, like Salesforce is an investor in Reejig. So I want to build $1 billion company and I want to do it with under 100 people. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off, but I'm going to try my best to test it and share as much as we can. So I did this article with Forbes where I was telling them about like I had built like this agency to take away the SDR work. It was all agent. It was beautiful. It was like 18 months ago and it was really, really good. And it was going so well, Itai, for about 6 weeks. I was like, this is amazing. We've never had as many meetings. It's so good. And then the whole thing went terribly wrong because we were blasting people so hard that we churned out our inboxes. So actually like it becomes spammy and people start flagging it as spam. And then it had the negative effect where then our delivery wasn't going through. So one of the examples, and I give this as a really honest example because some of the scenarios where we have looked at what can we automate versus human, just because we can, should we, and what is the level? And we went like completely like no break, no human in the loop, like literally just like straight to the floor. So that was a really good learning for me that it was like, and a lot of the folks that are on this are like folks that are connected to re-engineering work in companies. They're, leadership around people, these folks are going to be right at the forefront of like helping the business reinvent and make sure that people adopt the AI. And that was like one of the things I wanted to share, like, because in some of these scenarios, like the AI is so good that it's bad. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you don't want to like, and for us, you don't want to blow up your inboxes and not have any of your emails deliver, right? Like that. So that was like one of the things. Do you see, right? And this is another thing that I find folks talk about. So in a world where you now have like humans plus agent, and let's say your sellers have to book 5 meetings a week. And
Mhm.
because of the work that you're now doing with Agent Force, they can book 7 meetings a week. are you resetting targets and telling your people that expectations are now changed? Or like, what's the human component here? Because like, if you know that your technology can do X and your people should be doing it, shouldn't we have to have that conversation with people to say, okay, 7 meetings a week or book me X amount of new pipe? Like, what do you see around that level of when things do work? What happens?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of this concept known as the Jevons paradox, which was, back in, when the oil production kind of like, was starting, and it seemed like, I was like, wow, we have so much oil, and not a lot of, they just had like a few like cars and a few things that used oil. And they were like, wow, okay, so oil prices are basically going to be like cheap as dirt, and because there's going to be so much and the demand is going to be low. But guess what? Because it's cheap and there's so much of it, there's a lot more use cases and a lot more things that can use oil. And so similarly with AI, it's you can think about it as like, oh wow, we're going to be so like we're going to automate everything and we can sit back and just like let
Yeah.
AI do everything for us. But guess what? There's so many things that you can do now with AI. You're doing more and more and more. So even though you can scale, everyone is kind of like is scaling up. So
Yeah.
in a way, sure. I mean, targets are going to be a little different. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily about the amount of meeting. Maybe it's going to be about the quality of the meetings, right? Maybe it's going to be about
Interesting.
other things. But I think that it's not necessarily, when everyone has access to it or the potential access for it, it just raises like the bar for everyone. It's not
Yeah.
and I think, you know, early adopters can have certain advantages. And I think that companies, especially companies that have like very organized data, are going to have advantage, at least in the beginning. But it's really about how do you position the kind of the mindset of people that are really going to take advantage of these technologies. So I don't think it's clear, and I think that we're seeing a lot of really interesting use cases of how different companies are leveraging it.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I think collectively folks on this call care about is their role typically will be about reinventing with agent, right? They're not on the technology side, they're more on the like put the technology into the business. And a lot of these folks are either working with us or working, to figure out like what is the work. That part we spoke about. I mean, Reejig, we look at what are all the tasks, what are all
Mhm.
the subtasks, like looking at that visibility of work to then most of our customers started out with like, give me visibility of my work.
Yeah.
Then we kind of give them a GPS to tell them where to take action. And then now it's about agent building and actually defining those new agents. In that world, like, are there key areas that you see to be successful that you see not only are there easier use cases to go after and tasks to go after, but also they perform really well? Like what do you see kind of coming out
Well,
as like what did you call them? You called them boring, like you had
yeah.
this sentence you said to me one time. What was it? Something about like the boring stuff being so really good or something?
Well,
The boring basics or something?
there's the busy work, right? Where you have things that are, you have to do like these kind of like it's business critical, right? It's very important for the business, but it doesn't take a lot of your brain activity. And the other one is distractions, things that take a lot of your brain power, but they're not very important for the business. Maybe your boss wants a presentation about how your team has done in the past month. So these are the two kind of elements. But if you think about things that are both critical for the business and you using your brain, you're coming to this area where like, okay, this is stuff that how can we create new opportunities? And so my question to you actually is like, okay, so you're mapping those tasks and everything. What about net new tasks that
Yeah,
exist
yeah, yeah.
now? Because now we are working differently. So it's not just about mapping the tasks of the past, is like now that we have AI, we're doing things differently. And how are we mapping these new tasks, and how are we thinking
100%.
about those?
Yeah, and it's really good because the way that we believe, so imagine a world where you've got like humans and agents, right? And your company is going to have both type of worker. You need a new infrastructure to enable that to work together. So, people and jobs was like the thing of like, the old days. The new world is like tasks. And is it like a human or is it an agent completion of the task, right? And a lot of the things that folks forget is that when put in an agent, yes, you're removing tasks or you're removing parts of the subtask of the task. So little, mini steps of it, but also you introduce net new things that you've never done before.
Yeah.
So there's this architecture requirement for a business to have this live and dynamic view of like work in the company. So like think about like the Databricks work log. I know all the work that's happening and I've got an observability layer that tells you how work is changing. And that is with new and stuff being taken away. And then the skills that are required to do that work could be human or agent. And I think this is where companies are now, really starting to realize that in order for agent to be successful, they actually need this architecture. And it's basically what you just said at the start. It's data. They
Yeah.
need data to tell them about what is their work in a structured way that helps them make good and informed decisions, and that this work keeps evolving so that the architecture keeps evolving. So that's kind of where we see kind of two buyers of our and users of Reejig. There's this one side that's really focused on the builder, telling you where to go, what agent to deploy, tracking the agent performance, that kind of is one part. And then the second part, it's like, okay, and because of that, what does that mean? It changes our work. How does the work architecture shift? And what have you added in? And then, by the way, when you add in new work, you need to train your people up in all these new things. There's new skill requirements that, everyone's expecting employees to just, lift up ChatGPT and suddenly we've got 4x improvements. There's this other part where HR folks and training folks and enablers have to enable the people to be able to complete that new work. So very much so what we're seeing right now.
And we're going to see those two parts start to merge, right? So you have kind of one part is managing your agents, your digital agents. One part is managing your human agents. We're going to see that converge into having workforce management that is managing
Mm,
both and understanding and knowing from that the ontology of work and knowing from all the skills and automation where those handoffs need to happen, where that convergence is,
exactly.
and managing this as one workforce, because that's really what it is. And also being able to do, and that's what Reejig does so well, understanding where are the gaps, where do we like where
Yeah.
we might be able to optimize more, how do we empower the people to be more not just more productive and efficient, but also more satisfied with what they're actually
Yeah.
to do and want to contribute.
Yeah.
Because everybody in the end of the day wants to be effective and contributing something, some sort of value. And I feel like a lot of tasks that exist today may not be as satisfying. It's
Yep.
kind of like, what am I doing? Like, what is my impact really? Am I actually making any change? Or is this
Yep.
something that, can be just automated?
One of the things that we're working on in the back end of the data. So like imagine I can see all the tasks, I can see all the subtasks, I can see workflows. What I'm now doing in the back of the product is I'm then correlating tasks to like what tasks help me make more money as a company? What tasks can we get rid of that like cost us money and they're like kind of the kind of work that kind of folks don't want to do? And then the third bucket is what tasks could we remove that cause a lot of pain to our team so we can make
Yeah.
this a more enjoyable place to work? So like you hear about like sellers out on site, going in and they're out on location and they've got parts of their admin that they hate doing. Like if we were to make this the best job in the world for an individual, and if for every time that you hire an employee and they stay longer, that we can get them to stay longer in the business and stay high performing longer, that's connected to money, right? So
Yeah.
like I'm kind of splitting it into these three buckets now where I'm like telling the customer, like this is not all about cost out. This is about absolutely there's cost. Most customers we work with are actually not wanting to pull people. What they're saying is we're going to grow at an aggressive rate and not grow our headcount.
Mhm.
That's what we see generally now. And that's a big shift from where it was. When we first started doing this, Itai, it was very much so we want to cut X amount of budget and blah, blah, blah. Now it's not that. Now it's like, okay, like we're gonna like accelerate our growth because we're gonna be
Yeah.
so much innovation and we're gonna like our people are faster and we're higher velocity and we're removing these bottlenecks. And then this other kind of component really focuses then on the other customers that are starting to get really mature are like, oh wow, like what could we do to make work more enjoyable? Because there's a dollar value back to that as well. So this is kind of how I'm now starting. Like we've really advanced our like thinking with customers where it's like, let's triage you around these kind of core tasks. And then the other level that I kind of now triage customers to is if customers come up with these ideas for task reinvention with agent, but let's say it requires like 10 million APIs, cybersecurity, 7 months reviews, like there's too much complexity. It's like open heart surgery. We're going to downgrade that one for a minute, and we're going to focus an early customer on stuff that feels light and easier, and like they don't require like open heart surgery to do this, because what we find is customers get very excited. They're like, this is so amazing. We've got this intelligence that tells us what to do. And then they go into status quo because the recommendations are too hard. So you
And
got to start them, like push them off the cliff just ever so slightly.
I think though, and I'm curious what you think about this, at the same time, as you're kind of creating all that on the front end of things, if we call it front end, of making a task more enjoyable, augmenting certain tasks, scaling up the capability. On the back end of it, of the data, there are new tasks being created
Mhm.
because you need to annotate the data, you need to test the data, you need to have humans, maybe whether it's experts or just anyone kind of like looking at the data, ensuring that it's correct, cleaning it up. And so there's a whole new category of tasks, of human tasks that are actually being introduced. It's almost like the new kind of work, and in a way that's busy work on itself that cannot be automated. It's busy work that has to be human because you have to create that engine and the data that feeds into the machine. And
Yeah.
so I think that a lot of time, you know, we ignore a lot of that place. That kind of like, oh, how does that data actually gets created? What do we train these models with? How
Yeah.
do we actually test it? How do we ensure of like security and trust and compliance and all that stuff? And I think that's a big area that everyone needs to actually think about, especially as a larger organization, that you need some protocols and you need some ways to kind of ensure that your data and the output of the agents is accurate and it reflects your values.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that even in that scenario where you get that right, one of the biggest problems that I see today is, let's say you've identified the work, you know where to go, you know what agent, you've deployed agent, and if only 20% of your population adopt that agent, is that a success? And I think one of the things that we're starting to see is back to the human in the loop, right? Like, how do we get employees to actually do the things that we want to do, when a lot of the bigger, it's different, I think, in tech companies, and I might be biased to this because we're kind of like in there and it's an expectation to do it, but general companies where folks are finding out about this, it's pretty terrifying to people to think that like the work around them is getting changed. One of the things we've debated about before, it's like, how much do I predict your work versus go and knock on your door and ask you, hey Itai, what are you doing every day?
Mm.
Because that terrifies an employee, right? It kind of creates this like optical like feeling of like, oh my God, why are you asking me that question? But in a world where you have to essentially redesign, reset how folks work, they've got a new way of working. That's where I see the biggest risk. Most folks talk about the agents being the problem and the pilots. You've seen all the articles, the pilots not working. I actually see just firsthand that it's mostly people are just not doing the thing that they're supposed to do. And it's partly because people have had a half an hour call with them to do prompt training and then expected them to be super successful and 10x their job. Like, what do you like? What are you seeing around like human adoption and just that whole like? Yeah, you I think you called it more on the change side at the start, right? Behavioral
I mean,
shift.
I mean, it's a behavioral, and honestly, work is changing, and that change is already here. Um, and I like my base advice always to people is like just learn how to use AI tools, just play around with it. Right now, we're still in the early stages of it, but the best way to uh, future-proof anyone's career at any level, right, from the CEO to like to the front lines, is using AI tools, knowing how to do it, knowing how to prompt, knowing how to do, right now it's simple. There's not that much you can do with AI. It's not like it's that complex. Think about to the late 90s when like, simple HTML tools came out. It was not that complex. Now coding and everything is so complex.
Hmm.
Learn it now so you have a little bit of that, that knowledge. My kids are using AI for their school. They're like AI natives. Remember when we used to call it kind of digital natives that
Yeah,
grew up
same in my
on that
kids.
technology. And so it is so important to just be familiar with it, play around with these tools, try to vibe code. It's easy. It really is, even
We
for
should do
people
a
who have never done.
hackathon.
Yeah.
We should do a hackathon where we get people vibe coding and just get them comfortable and start doing that more stuff with the community, because I think that'll make a difference. We've got a question here from Ivory. What do you anticipate will be the long-term effects of the lack of human touch on customer relationship management and employee engagement? And how can organizations address these issues?
I mean, I think that human touch is going to remain paramount. All the efficiencies that we can get from AI agents are really about removing the other things that we're doing. How much of your day are you spending with your customer versus logging things in the system and doing all these really kind of operational things that are that busy work. So yes, if you're an organization that is trying to remove that human touch and kind of automate that human touch, I think that is going to backfire. But if you're able to remove the busy work and the administrative work from your people and let them spend more times face to face in calls and engaging, having and growing those relationships, that is, I think, where we're going to see the most benefit.
Yeah, and that's linked to all kind of like human facing roles, whether you're in HR, whether you're in sales, whether you're customer success, anything that has that connection point. I completely agree with you. Itai, I could talk to you for days on this topic. It's so exciting. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I might hook you up for that invitation for a hackathon, because that would be fun to
Yeah.
host one. That would be very cool, actually. Just before you go, my 7-year-old daughter, Indy, she vibe codes with the new ChatGPT version to make herself. She talks to it and says, "I'm bored. Build me a game." And she builds like a computer game where she designs like different computer games. It's ridiculous. You should
Amazing.
see this.
That's
It's
incredible.
she's
I'd love to see
7.
it. Please,
And
please.
she's dyslexic. So she can't really write that well, but she can verbally give orders like something shocking. And she has the listening to a baby prompt is the funniest thing
Oh,
that you've
man,
ever heard. I'll
I have
send
to
you a
see it.
video after. It is very cool.
Please
But
do.
Itai, thank you so much. Thank you so much to folks. If you want to connect with Itai on LinkedIn, you'll find his link here. Any questions? And for those who are dialing in while you're on the treadmill or going for the walk, I hope you enjoy this one and see you all soon. Thanks, Itai.
Thank you.